Good evening. Hi, and welcome to the first live video cast of the Law Center. I am your host and founder of the Law Center, Larry DeMarco. Thank you for joining us. We will be going live on most Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. And this evening, I have two very special guests for International Child-Centered Divorce Month. The first is Rosalind Sedacca, certified divorce coach. She's a divorce and co-parenting coach recognized as the voice for child-centered divorce. She's the founder of Child-Centered Divorce Network, which provides valuable resources for parents who are facing, moving through, or transitioning after divorce. She's also the author of How Do I Tell the Kids About Divorce? Create a Storybook Guide to Preparing Your Children with Love, and the co-host of Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living radio show and podcast. Rosalind is an expert blogger for numerous divorce, parenting, and dating websites and blogs, and she wrote numerous ebooks and e-courses on co-parenting success strategies for parents. Also with me is Dr. Mark Roseman. He's also known as Dr. Mark. He's an author, international speaker, and child custody expert specializing in high conflict personality and parental alienation. He began his field work in 1998 as a child advocate, then for 10 years as assistant director for child access in Washington, D.C., with the Children's Rights Council, serving with its founder, attorney David Levy. Dr. Roseman is founder and CEO of the Toby Center for Family Transitions, a leading child visitation and child reunification agency based out in Florida, and is the publisher of Contemporary Family Magazine. Rosalind and Dr. Mark, thank you for joining me tonight.
It's a pleasure.
Pleasure to have you. So let's get started. Rosalind, tell us about International Child-Centered Divorce Month, which is this January, and its value for every divorcing and divorced parent.
Well, thank you. Yes, and this is our 15th anniversary commemorating International Child-Centered Divorce Month. January is the time of year that more divorces are initiated than any other after the holiday season. And so we wanted to focus on helping parents before, during, and after divorce to make the best decisions to protect their children. And so we put together a special website throughout January, and divorce experts on 4 continents around the world are participating in providing free downloadable gifts and resources to help parents make the best decisions they can and to protect the children. So this is an educational month, a month of reminding parents about their responsibilities towards their children and how to co-parent in the most effective manner so that the children they love have the best possible outcome. And the place to find this website is divorcedparentsupport.com.
Viewers, you can also find that in the description portion of this video, as well as any other web address that any of us mention here this evening. Roz, what are the 2 most important gifts divorced parents can give to their children?
Yes. The freedom to love their parents is the first gift. That means regardless of how you may feel about your former spouse, you want your children not to feel guilty or ashamed for loving their parent. And the second gift is the freedom to let both parents love them. Again, when divorce happens, it's very tempting to want to keep your children from feeling strongly about the other parent who you may not love that much anymore. And it's a gift for your children to not be enhanced and affected negatively by emotions that are destroying their connection with their parent. So let them love both parents, let them be loved by both parents, and that's the greatest gift you can give them.
Rosalind, what advice do you have for clients who can get that down? They're okay with living or giving that gift, but the other parents is the issue. How do you coach a client who's under attack all the time?
Yeah, well, that's one of the most difficult things, and I'm sure Dr. Roseman is going to be addressing that when it gets into dramatic stages. But we want to remind both parents that if they love their children, that's the one thing they have in common, and that's the groundwork for creating a child-centered divorce, a co-parenting relationship that takes the children's well-being seriously into account. And so we want to remind parents to pick their battles and not be trying to control every detail in the other house, because that's impossible to do. And also find things that are right about what your co-parent is doing so that you can say something positive about them and not constantly be dealing with criticism and putting your co-parent down all the time. It's challenging when you have a co-parent who's trying to be obstinate, who's trying to create barriers and obstacles to a successful relationship, but you have to be mindful that your children are watching and learning from you. And so remember that you're a role model, and every decision you make, every step you take to create more peace and more harmony and more accord in the relationship is a step that your children are watching and learning. How do my parents deal with conflict? What are they picking up from that? It's very important to keep that in mind.
What are the most serious mistakes divorced parents must avoid?
Well, for one, studies have proven repeatedly that conflict does the most damage to children, whether they're in an intact marriage or in a divorce. It's parental conflict around them that harms them. It changes who they are, and it creates a lot of emotional anxiety and psychological issues the more they're exposed to it. So you want to keep your fights away from your kids, even if it's in another room or on the phone. It still is something that the kids are aware of. Another serious mistake to avoid is bad-mouthing the other parent to the children or around the children. It's so tempting to roll your eyes, to make disparaging comments, to say, gee, you're getting just like your lazy father was, things like that. But kids pick up on it, and they're hurt because they love both parents innately. They don't want to hear one parent putting down the other parent, and they feel guilty for loving the other parent when maybe they shouldn't, because my other parent is telling me something bad about them. So you don't want to do that because it changes who they are. And you also don't want to be confiding in your children as little adults. It's very tempting to want to justify the divorce and explain, if dad didn't have an affair, if mom wasn't an alcoholic, none of these things would be happening. But children's brains aren't set up to be able to understand and grasp adult information. So if your child can't fix your divorce, you shouldn't be confiding adult information to them. And it's very tempting to do that and to justify doing it, but it robs your children of their childhood. Suddenly they're little adults trying to fix your mess. And as we all know, parents can't fix their own relationship issues. It's hard enough for us to deal with them. Why bring your innocent children into the mix? And our children are always innocent. We also don't want to be turning our children into messengers and say, tell daddy I'm going to be 2 hours late on Friday. Well, it's not their responsibility to remember that. Perhaps they forget it or they get the message wrong. Are you going to be blaming your children? It's so much easier to use the online scheduling tools or to send texts or emails or do adult things and communicate to one another and not put the burden on your children. And one other mistake I think is worth bringing up, and that's not asking your children to become spies on your behalf. It's very tempting to want to know what mom's boyfriend said and what dad served for dinner the other night. And of course, like conversation, you're naturally going to ask questions. But kids innately know when you're trying to probe and pry. And again, they may take sides, they may change the story, they may want to mix things up and confuse you because they're angry at you. Children are hurt and confused and don't know how to respond when you're putting them in a position that's uncomfortable for them. So we want to always put ourselves in our children's shoes, see the world through their eyes, and make decisions that are based on their age and the fact that they're innocent children and they deserve a childhood despite your divorce.
Roz, it's sometimes hard for parents to get along even when they're married in terms of raising the kids. But so now that you're separated, what are some effective co-parenting success strategies?
Well, you monitor your communication skills, because there are ways of addressing things. There are ways of saying things that are going to put your partner on the defensive, or they're not. And so instead of using you language and pointing the finger, you always, even instead of using I language, I want you to do this and I prefer if you did that, it's best to use language about your children, because the one thing you have in common as co-parents is the love of those children. So it's much easier to start by saying, little Susie or little Johnny said such and such, and that concerns me. What do you think about this? Have a conversation, ask questions, be mindful of how your co-parent is feeling about things rather than stepping on them. And again, pick your battles so that you're not micromanaging every detail of every encounter that either one of you has with your children. Also, you want to allow your co-parent to be involved in the most important events and experiences in your children's lives. So even if you have a new partner, you want to make sure that the co-parent is at graduations and special school events and weddings, or that you ask the co-parent to teach little Johnny how to drive rather than the strange new partner who's in your life. You want to be making decisions that are based on understanding how it feels, because the more you are cooperative, the more you work to create a harmonious relationship with one another, the more likely your partner, your ex rather, is going to be doing the same for you. Co-parenting is a lifelong experience. It doesn't end when the divorce is over. It doesn't end when your child graduates from high school. It's a lifelong experience. So you want to set the foundation for a solid co-parenting relationship early on, and then be there for one another, because this is going to make life better for both co-parents. And again, your children are watching and learning from you. The way you handle things is the way you're teaching them how to handle relationships and conflicts in their adult life.
What are the most important questions co-parents can ask themselves to make sure they're in the right place?
There are many questions that I work with clients in that are very helpful in getting an insight about the co-parenting experience. One of the questions is, would I be still making the same decision if we were still married? Would I be making the same decisions if we were still married? If you would have said yes to something, but now you're trying to get back at your ex and you're intentionally saying no, that's not co-parenting from the heart space in what's best for your children. That's co-parenting from a place of trying to be vindictive, and it never pays off in the best possible way. So make decisions alone or with your co-parent, really focused on what is best from a parenting perspective, because you're parents first and you're divorced second, and it's important to keep that in mind. You also want to ask yourself, do I love my children more than I may dislike or hate my ex? Yes, you may feel very justified in having negative feelings about the person that you divorced, but you must be able to answer that question and say, yes, I love my children more, and then be able to make mindful, conscious, mature adult decisions on their behalf that are not based on the revenge and anger and hatred and all those harmful emotions that you don't want to teach your children about, you don't want to role model for your children, and they harm you. They hurt you from the inside out, and they also keep you from having a satisfying love relationship moving forward, because when we're caught and tied to the hatred from the past, it really keeps us from creating a healthy relationship moving forward. One more question that's very important to ask yourself is, how are our children going to feel about the way we handled our divorce when they're grown adults? Think about your children, even though they may be 3 or 9 or 13 right now, and remember that they're going to be grown adults and they're going to hold you accountable for the way you behave, for the actions you took. There are many adult children of divorce who are very angry at their parents, who have even cut off relationships with their parents, and you don't want to find yourself in that position. So right now, early on, is when you can make decisions that are beneficial. And don't be afraid to apologize to your children. If you made any of these mistakes and you did things that you regret, look at your child in the eye and say, Mom, Dad made a mistake. I apologize for that. And I hope you'll forgive me. From now on, we're going to do things differently. Your kids will respect and honor you for doing that. They'll learn that it's okay to make mistakes, that people do that, and it's okay to apologize for mistakes. And that's another great gift you can give your children.
Rosalind, thank you for that advice. Dr. Mark, I'd like to address you now. Please explain what international child-centered divorce means to you.
I think that what it does, if you look at the words, is that, and for me, is to see that as individuals, we really are not alone. Those of us who have engaged in divorce and separation, we are not alone. And in fact, it's not unique to this country or to the audience who may be hearing, this fine interview. In fact, it is international, and so that collectively, if we can all work towards the appreciation that it is not unique for one or for those in one country, that in fact it is a phenomenon, divorce, that is both present and also historical. Since the times of the Old Testament, of written history, there has been divorce. And so the need to really understand that it's a human phenomenon that is shared by humans internationally.
What may be the value for Child-Centered Divorce Month for parents who aren't still together with their ex and still have to co-parent?
I believe that as humans, picking up that thread, we need to be reminded. And we are emotional beings, and so we respond without thinking very frequently. And so the purpose of holidays, the purpose of special days, special times of the year, are moments that really reach our consciousness. And so the value of a child-centered divorce, International Child-Centered Divorce Month, which Roz had designed and promoted for 15 years, serves to bring that consciousness into these very traumatic times when people separate and divorce.
What are the common issues you found among parents engaged in high conflict custody and divorce?
Again, when we look at loss, any type of loss, we respond emotionally. Much of the emotions that we feel are expressed or are restrained. They can be very heightened responses, and they can be very muted. But with high conflict divorce, it is the time when at least one of the parents is very vocal and very demonstrative about not complying with even court orders for co-parenting, for visitation, for sharing on holidays. But the high conflict is really one that reflects the heights of emotions, the anger, the hostility the disappointment, the low self-esteem, and the trauma that as parents we may have experienced as children. And so that separation, that divorce has triggered such an emotional reaction that is so deep and so visceral that it brings about illogical and inappropriate responses when we are looking at refiguring the relationships that we have all had with each other as parents and with our children. And so the high conflict divorce is one which the courts do need to do a better job at screening and providing interventions and prevention. But it is that time where, look at that closed fist. You can see the impact that high conflict considerations, have for myself. But working with people in high conflict is quite a challenge because they kind of prioritize what their needs are. One who becomes frequently the primary parent are going to want to punish the other parent who may have been responsible for the idea of separating, who may have, in fact, sought out self-medication due to unhappiness, using drugs and alcohol, or abandonment of the family. So in high conflict, the potential for finding cases where there's been very bad behavior by one parent due to their self-medication, as I mentioned, due to their abandonment, as I had said. But there is also the behaviors of a parent, unwilling to accept the other parent's desire to end that marriage for other reasons that are not, due to domestic violence or drugs of any kind. So I think that it's extremely complicated, and yet the courts handle high conflict in a very cookie cutter fashion, unfortunately. And we have to realize that people are human. We have emotions, and we're not simply cogs in any kind of social mechanism or family structure. We are people with, as is exemplified by those in high conflict, fear, anxiety, dread, anger, hostility, and those are very normal responses.
So, Dr. Mark, if we're one of these parents and we're caught up in one of these emotional high conflict situations, what should our goals be?
In my book, Preserving Family Ties, I address that, and when I speak, I address 3 stages: acknowledgement, recognition, and support. We need to acknowledge where we're at. Where are we at in terms of our family relationships now? Where are we in our own thinking about that, thinking of our future, thinking of our emotional status? We need to acknowledge all of that now. We can do that if we pause and breathe and get some clarity to allow us to address very painful and complex understanding. But once we acknowledge where we're at, then we can say, okay, the next stage is to recognize what we would prefer, where we would prefer to be emotionally, socially, in all aspects, vocationally, financially. Where would we prefer? It's a moment when you have a collision. It's time to take stock, not only of what happened, but also what we would prefer. And so then you can then prepare a roadmap, which might involve litigation in high conflict or any divorce cases. There might be that roadmap for litigation, for finding alternatives to resolving the coming apart of that family and the reformation and redefining of these relationships. And then be open to support. Because support of all kinds will assist you in achieving what you want, not only for your children and with your children, but who are you as a single person? Who are you? What do you want in your life? What do you want to contribute to society? And what do you want to do to set an example for your children, for your friends, and your community? And so it's a time to step back, acknowledge where you are, recognize you do have a future, and finding those resources, the emotional, psychological, the academic, the financial, take stock of who you are, what your abilities are, and where you would prefer to be, what you would like to do in life. Your children will love you even more for that because you've showed them resilience.
Dr. Mark, my next question, I'm sure you could teach a curriculum on it. However, if you could just give us the short answer for where do courts fail in these high conflict situations, and what changes would you like to see that would make things better for families going through this?
Sign up for my next course.
Yeah, exactly. I know that's a lot, but if you could give us the short version.
Absolutely. And the short version is this. It was Albert Einstein who said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Well, clearly, we have a broken system. Why? Because it doesn't treat everybody uniformly, and it doesn't create the outcomes that we all want. I know we all want. So let's look at where the failings may be in our communities, in our judicial system, and let's make those improvements. So some of the things that can be done is if a court had more of a handle on what are the outcomes that they create, because every court decision, according to research, shows, and my book, Preserving Family Ties, speaks about the research that people should use when they go to court, by the way. But the research shows every court decision on family custody, on child custody, will affect a family up to 6 generations. That's 150 years. So if we can have the judges step back and say, look, there are tools that you can use in the court better to make better decisions, then we can all be assured that there'll be better outcomes for our children.
Mark, thank you for that. Listen, I have just one more question for each of you before we close up here. Roz, tell us about a gift you have for our viewers.
Yes, I have a free ebook, Post-Divorce Parenting, Success Strategies for Getting It Right, that can be found on my website, ChildCentered with an ED, Divorce, Child-Centered Divorce. And again, if you go to divorcedparentsupport.com, you'll find a wealth of free ebooks and e-courses and programs from divorce experts around the world in January for International Child-Centered Divorce Month.
And Dr. Mark, where can we learn more about you and what you do for children and families?
Thank you. You were very kind to ask that question. And you had introduced the Toby Center, which I founded in South Florida over 10 years ago, providing clinical and non-clinical visitation and reunification work for children. But as a result of all my years in the field, I realized that, parents need additional help. So I created Mark David Roseman and Associates to provide support groups for targeted parents, and also trainings for family professionals. In addition, during this last year and a half, I created a new magazine called Contemporary Family, a quarterly, which is another tool that all family professionals can use and parents can refer to, looking at what are the issues internationally impacting children when parents separate, and what is the research that comes out of countries internationally, and what are best practices that are coming out of different countries that we can all share in improving child outcomes.
Thanks. And I want to remind our viewers that every website that our guests mentioned, you can find in the description portion of the video. So Roz and Dr. Mark, we're going to leave it there, but I want to thank you both for being a guest on the Law Center videocast.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Very much.
Please come again. We have been talking with Rosalind Sedacca and Dr. Mark Roseman, and I am your host, Larry DeMarco. We'll be broadcasting live on Tuesdays at 7 p.m., where you can interact with us real time while we watch the Law Center videocast together. Please try out the other informational legal videos on my channel, especially the self-help playlists for self-represented litigants in family court. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you can catch all our new videos and share these great videos with your contact list and social media friends. Thanks for watching. Tune in next time. Bye for now.